Okay.
Take it away, Diane.
Yes, I would like to call the annual general meeting of the Arts Accessibility Network of Manitoba to order. I'm Diane Dreger, the chair. Greetings to everybody. I would like to acknowledge that AANM is located on Treaty 1 land, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Dene, Dakota, and Oji-Cree nations, and the homeland of the Métis. I would like to ask for approval of the agenda that was circulated for the AGM. Do I have someone to move? You can see here.
Oh, that was the wrong one. I shared the wrong one.
Okay, Susan Lambert moves. Seconder.
I'll do it.
Okay, Ted. Okay, all in favor? Okay, opposed? Carried. Okay, we'll go to number 3. Approval of the minutes of the 2019-2020 AGM, which we are now seeing on our screen, which we have all had a look at before the meeting. Any comments, questions, or changes to the minutes from last year?
No.
Okay. If not, I will ask for a motion to accept the 2019-2020 AGM minutes. Andrea? Seconder?
I'll do it.
Dana? All in favor? Opposed? None? Carried. Okay, number 4, our reports for the year end. The first report A is my message, and I will read from the statement that I circulated to all you folks. That's in the AGM papers. It's been my honor to serve as the chair of Arts Accessibility Network Manitoba for the past year. I would like to introduce you to the AANM board members, Ted Yates-Howarth, Vice Chair, Susan Lambert, Past Chair, Dana Kletke, Treasurer, Brennan Smith, Secretary, and Bram Keast. I also wish to thank outgoing AANM board members Christian Higham and Crystal Kordalchuk for their service. And I also thank Janelle Shaw, AANM's Executive Director, for her outstanding work in the past year. Our organization is moving from strength to strength. We have been successful in running new initiatives such as our Salons series, where disabled mentors in the areas of writing, theater, and visual art worked with other disabled artists. This was conceived as a program organized by, run by, and taught by artists with disabilities. Again, this reinforced AANM's goal to be a leader in supporting the careers and providing opportunity for training. The salon model meant that artists who know what it's like to experience the barriers of being a disabled artist were able to pass on their skills to other disabled artists. We thank the Manitoba Arts Council for providing the funding for this project. In addition, the COVID-19 pandemic with its lockdowns provided the opportunity for AANM to move the First Fridays initiative in the Exchange online to our website. We had visual artists and one musician take part. We obtained funding to improve our website from the Assiniboine Credit Union, and this has meant that disabled artists' art has been viewed far and wide, not just in Winnipeg. AANM received grants related to COVID-19 support, such as the Manitoba Bridge Grant for organizations. In addition, AANM received funds from the Canada Council during COVID, which AANM used to fund 5 micro grants for artists with disabilities. We also received funding from the Winnipeg Foundation, Manitoba Arts Council, and the Digital Now Canada Council for the Arts grant. Our role as the voice of artists with disabilities continued through public presentations, such as Accessibility on Stage and Off, where we discussed access for actors and the public. Creative Manitoba asked AANM artists to run seminars about accessibility in the arts called Creative Accessibility. Our executive director, Janelle Shaw, and board members continue to meet with people in the arts community to consult on disability arts and access. AANM has embarked upon many successful initiatives this year. We thank all of our funders, volunteers, and staff who have made it happen. We look forward to a fruitful 2021-22. Thanks. Okay. 4B, overview of the organization.
All
Janelle.
right. Okay, so this is probably not going to be anything new to people, but I'm just going to read it out so everyone knows what the organization is about. So Arts Accessibility Network Manitoba is a regional not-for-profit artist-run charitable organization dedicated to the full inclusion of artists and audiences with disabilities into all facets of the arts community. Our vision is the full inclusion of artists and audiences with disabilities into all facets of the art community. Our mandate is to facilitate a network of artists and stakeholders for both the arts and disability communities that support artists with disabilities in achieving individual artistic excellence, promotes higher visibility of these artists within all disciplines, and promotes policies and practices intended to make the arts more accessible for all Manitobans. Our goals are: 1, to be the voice for artists and audiences with disabilities in Manitoba, to bring leadership on access and equity issues that impact the arts, empower artists with disabilities by providing access to the resources they need to advance the artistic practice, to bring artists with disabilities and stakeholders together to explore and nurture a creative and inclusive community, to educate and inform the arts community, policymakers, and art funders about artists and audiences with disabilities, to act as a resource to arts organizations and institutions, making their venues and services more suitable to people with disabilities, and to gather and disseminate relevant information to individuals and organizations in the disability and arts sector. Our mission is to advance the education of artists with disabilities by providing courses, instructional seminars, and workshops in a variety of artistic disciplines, and on topics such as grant writing, portfolio preparation, and photography documentation. Another of our missions is to advance the public appreciation of arts by producing public art exhibitions, presentations, performance art events, and by providing a forum for qualified artists to exhibit, present, or perform their artistic works through participation in such events. We also like to promote health by providing artists with disabilities the appropriate facilities and services adapted to accommodate their specific needs. And lastly, to undertake activities ancillary and incidental to the attainment of the above charitable purposes. That's the organization. Would you like me to just jump into part C, Diane? Okay, part C. I'm going to tell you all about the achievements of the last year. So our fiscal year runs from April 1st to March 31st. So I'm going to begin with April 2020. So in April 2020, I met with professors from the University of Manitoba to discuss the research project Embodying Accountability, Rethinking Measurement Tools for Disability, MAD, and Deaf Arts. We discussed wanting to partner for an opening so that they could conduct their research on how people interact with disability art. We also had a roundtable discussion, accessibility on and off the stage, which was a great success. There were 22 attendees on the Zoom meeting, which doesn't include the panelists. And for the Facebook live stream, we reached 1,917 people with 158 engagements, 4 shares, and 565 views at the time of the report. Also, First Friday was postponed for this month in light of the COVID pandemic, as we kind of thought about how we were going to move forward. So May 2020, we held our first online exhibition by Marie LeBlanc. We reached over 6,700 people with over 120 responses on Facebook. So these online exhibitions really are making an impact and are reaching our audience members. In June 2020, I was able to speak with Senator Patricia Bovey about accessibility in the arts during the pandemic. I also spoke with Adam Jog from Imagine Canada about how we've been affected as an organization by the pandemic. We also had our First Friday event with Miranda Kuda. I'm just going to spell it because her name's hard for me to pronounce. It's Kudajczyzyk. Through that, we reached 115 people. We had 17 comments, and we sold an artwork. We were also successful that month for a grant with the Assiniboine Credit Union for our new website. In July, we began work on the new website right away. We also provided the Asl Interpretation for one night of the Fringe Fest online, Virtually Yours. And we also received that month Canada Council for the Arts grant, Phase 2 COVID-19 Emergency Support Fund. In August 2020, my meeting with the U of M professors came to fruition as we had our First Friday event with Elle Zaster, and the artwork was presented online as well as outdoor at a socially distanced outdoor opening. We projected artwork onto the side of the building and just were able to gather outside while being safe. There were 42 attendees and over $500 worth of artwork was sold. 255 people were reached via the online exhibition on Facebook, and the researchers for the U of M conducted 12 interviews for their research project. A&M was also offered a free half-page advertisement in Studio Magazine, which was out in September or the beginning of October of 2020. We had help from one of our board members, Crystal Kordalchuk. Thank you, Diane, to help create that graphic. In September 2020, we had a First Friday event with Jen Sebring. Jen also gave a virtual artist talk and sold an artwork. We also had been working on our files with Bev Pike, and Archives Manitoba accepted our files. And so we are now, our information about our organization and how it began is safely in the archives for anyone who wishes to learn more about it. We also brought our new website online, which was very exciting as it has a lot of really neat accessibility features and is very easy to use and nice to look at. We also were participating in Nuit Blanche, and unfortunately we had to cancel as a result of COVID-19. We were going to project the artwork and have a little bit of an opening reception, but instead the art got viewed online. I also gave an interview with CBC about the event, and with having that extra advertisement, our website was viewed, that specific page, 826 times, which is pretty good. In October 2020, we began our art salons. The writers had 3 participants and they were led by Kate Grissom. The visual artists had 8 participants led by Yvette Signorini. And the theater group had 5 participants led by Debbie Patterson. We also held our AGM, which was attended by all our board members, 6 extra members, and our ASL interpreters. The recording for the AGM was posted on A&M's Facebook page, and we reached 50 people with that post, which is great. In November 2020, we had another First Friday exhibition, this time with Ryan Smolik, with his piece, We Are Not Amused, which had 42 views. Myself and 2 of the board members also participated in the Manitoba Artist Run Centers Coalition anti-racism training, which was really great. And the Manitoba Arts Council approved our policy, a project for us to redo our policies. In December 2020, we decided to do a holiday shop for our first Fridays, and we sold 3 artworks, which was not too bad. I also gave an interview with over 10 students from the Red River in the Disabilities and Community Support Program. And lastly, I had our monthly artist call translated to ASL for our deaf members, and it was posted on our Facebook page. In January 2021, John O'Ross, one of our first musicians to perform on First Friday, gave a beautiful a cappella performance, which had 9 viewers at the time. 2 viewers, and has been viewed over 9 times so far. I also connected with Manitoba Possible in Brandon so that they could write a letter of support for our grant for the Manitoba Arts Council so that we could have Cryptic in Brandon, which we just did this past month. We created a poster and advertised our micro grants, which was very exciting to be able to offer that support to some of our artists. And I also met with Creative Manitoba, who were looking to hire coaches or mentors with disabilities, and we recommended 5 individuals. In February, we had a First Friday exhibition, which included a recorded artist talk. It was pretty fun. We used cat filters so that the artist could remain anonymous. And there were 33 views on the website, 5 on the YouTube channel, and 121 people reached on Facebook. I also met with Hannah Folger from the United to speak about this First Friday exhibition, as well as accessibility in the arts during and after a pandemic. And a lovely article appeared in the United on the First Friday exhibition for that month. I also attended a meeting for the National Legal Clinics for the Arts. They're looking to have headquarters in every province, and I wanted to ensure that the issues that artists with disabilities face were addressed. So it was very interesting to attend that. I also met with Rachel Anderson from Creative Manitoba to put on some workshops through them, which Diane mentioned, called Creative Accessibility. In March 2021, we had 21 submissions for our micro grants and 5 winners were chosen. We also applied for the Manitoba Bridge Grant, which we received, the Winnipeg Foundation Stabilization Grant, which we received, the Digital Now Canada Council Grant, which we received, and a Manitoba Arts Council Grant for Cryptic, which was successful. I also contacted the Winnipeg Arts Gallery about the lack of accessibility on the online opening of the new Inuit Art Center, and they wrote back asking for Asl interpreters. And that is our year in a synopsis. So there was a lot that happened, even though the pandemic was going on. We kept busy, we kept showing art, we kept supporting our artists. So it was really great. And so yes. Did you want to?
A very successful year.
It was. Did you want to talk about the upcoming
looking
products?
Forward.
Did you want to say, or do you want me
forward.
to? You, me?
Yes.
Me?
You.
Oh, okay. So what's coming up? So fall of 2021, I'm excited to say that we are going to be hiring a part-time staff. That's through the grant that we got with the Digital Originals with Canada Council for the Arts to create monthly online exhibitions and to give me a hand in the office, which we're very excited about. Interviews start next week, and we should have an announcement pretty soon about who will be our new staff member. Also during this past month, past summer, we started part 1 of the accessibility audits of the Winnipeg art scene with community consultations so that we could create the audit. Because audits typically are not created by those with disabilities, we felt that it was important that their feedback was known right from the beginning. So that was really great. We met with over 40 individuals and are now almost complete the audit, which is great. And in the winter and spring of 2022, we hope to start part 2, where we begin to audit the actual art spaces and create a database on our website to hold all that information just to create it, make it more easier for people with disabilities to know what they can expect at these spaces before they go, and to have it all in one area. So it's, it's no, you don't have to call all these places. It just makes it a lot simpler. And lastly, our other big project for the year is our spring summer of 2022. We will be having our member show. We're not too sure yet what the venue is going to be, but we will announce that when it happens. And that's our big plans for 2021-22.
Great. Thank you. Yes, we've had a very successful year this year, and we should congratulate all of us for all of our hard work and vision in creating all these things. Wow, when you hear the list, we've really done a lot and are doing a lot, and it's fantastic. Okay, we're going to look at E, review of the financial statements. Dana.
I will unmute myself. So as Janelle mentioned, when we're looking at these statements, we're thinking about April 1, 2020 to March 31st, 2021. And we'll move on. This is the review engagement. So we're moving to let's go straight to page 2. So the page 2, we start off with our balance sheet, or our statement of financial position. You'll see we have cash in the bank. We're going to be looking at the 2021 numbers. The 2020 numbers are there for comparison to the previous year. So in cash, we have cash in the bank at $55,950. We have some accounts receivable at $835. Goods and services tax recoverable. So as a charity, we can claim back half of our GST at $270. We have some donated artwork that was given to AANM, and its value is $931. So we include that as an asset. And we have some prepaid expenses, which is including insurance to, our website, and Zoom account and things like that, for $2,474. So we have a total, our total assets are $60,460. Our liabilities, we have some accounts payable and accrued liabilities at $7,889. And we have some deferred revenue for $11,500. And this is grants that we can only spend on the certain project that it's intended for. So it's included as a liability because we can't spend it on anything else, for a total of $19,389. Then we have net assets, which is our surplus. Our unrestricted surplus is at $26,071. And we have newly an internally restricted fund. So we've put aside some of our surplus in this year of $15,000 to cover future projects, including some operating and some programming. So we have a total of $41,071. So we balance out at $60,460. Now, I forgot to mention, if anyone has any questions while we're going over these statements, I won't be able to see you. So just speak up, or I don't know, maybe write in the chat. We're moving along to statements of revenues and expenditures. So this is our operations of revenues and expenses for the year. With earned revenue, we have some artist sales. So this is the total value of artwork that we sold out of the office at $912. We didn't have any co-production revenue this year. But we did have membership fees at $340. There's a little bit of interest at $102. And in the private sector, we have corporate sponsorships, which is great. ACU usually gives us some support, the Assiniboine Credit Union. We have some donations of $154, and that's just members sending us money for now that we have charitable tax status, we can get a charitable tax receipt. Donations, corporate donations. So this is what Janelle was talking about for our website development of $5,000, and we also had a little bit of $50 from our landlord. And then we have some donations in kind, and that again is the value of the artwork, $931. We did receive Winnipeg Foundation funding, but we have deferred it. So we'll look at that later on. So it doesn't show here as revenue. Then we move on to federal money. We have Canada Council for the Arts. We received Arts Emergency Support Fund. So this is COVID related for $16,300, which was fantastic. Canada Council for the Arts, our core operating funding grant. So we received an increase, also very exciting. We're now at $45,000, up from $38,000 in the year previous. And we still have project grant funding that we spent in this year, received and spent $8,976 from a project grant. And then we received some wage subsidies, also through the federal government, for $705. And in provincial funding, we received some project grants from the Manitoba Arts Council, $16,369, and Manitoba Bridge grant from the province for $15,000, which was very helpful. So as you see, we really increased our revenue from the previous year. We're at $110,339 for the total revenue. And moving on to expenses, this section here, this is a summary of all of our expenses. And then later on, we'll look at some of the detail. So total administrative expense is $41,074, which is a little less than last year. Artistic, $42,233, which is up from the previous year. Facility expenses, $3,994. And fundraising costs, $2. And marketing and communications at $5,665. So a total of $92,968 in expenses. So that leaves us with $17,371 surplus for the year. And if we move to the next page, thank you, Janelle. We see where we've put aside $15,000 to our internally restricted fund. So we start the year at $23,700. So we already had a surplus starting the year, a cushion that we built up over time, just in case something happens, we have that cushion. We add $17,371 this year to our surplus. And the board decided to set aside $15,000 of that money to put towards future projects. So now we have two surplus, designated surplus. One is unrestricted at $26,071, and then the other is $15,000 specifically for projects. This is a statement of cash flows. We don't need to review it. This is how the accountants determine how much cash we have in the bank at the end of the year. And then there are a whole bunch of notes, and I'm not going to go over any of these notes unless someone has a question. The accounts payable and accrued liabilities, there's a detail of some of the, a lot of the payables are employee deductions and salaries that owing at the end of the year with some suppliers for the $7,889. And then the deferred revenues, this is the money from mostly from the Winnipeg Foundation community grant that we're deferring into the next year for $10,000, and also a very small portion of the REACT project from Canada Council for the Arts for $1,500. So, and we'll spend all of that in 2021, 2022. Note number 5 is new for us because it's now our internally restricted fund. And then another section in our financial statements, number 7, there's quite a lot of notes, quite a few notes in here about the funding that we received from COVID-related funding sources due to the pandemic. So that's sort of a new section that has a lot more detail than I used to have. And then we have the detail of each of the sections. So in administrative costs, we have administrative expenses, office supplies, and professional development at $3,635. We have administrative salaries, which is $20,541. And we only have one staff member, but we have Janelle full-time. But we've divided her wages half in administration and half in artistic salaries. So you'll see there's two salary lines there. We don't have any in-kind salaries this year because we have paid staff. Professional fees, we have $14,215. This is a lot to do with the REACT grant and also our bookkeeping expenses and accounting fees. And then rent. So also our rent is divided between programming and admin for our funders. So our little office in our space is the rent on that, the desk is $2,683. So we have a total administrative cost of $41,074, which is actually a little lower than the previous year. In artistic, here you see the grants that we gave out to artists at $2,000. We have artist and professional fees at $11,409. This is exciting for us because this is money we've put into the hands of artists. Artist sales, this is money paid to artists for the sale of the work for $785. Catalogs, 302, we did a catalog. And education, audience development and outreach, 3,107. And a lot of that is also ASL and support for other organizations. Exhibition and programming, 4,089. Because we did a lot of programming, we have a few costs there. And the programming salary again at $20,541. So our total artistic expenses is $42,233. Our facility operating, very little facility repairs and maintenance at $85. Property insurance, $1,226. And our programming portion of our space, the rent is $2,683. So a total of $3,994 in facility operating. And then in marketing contract, $4,647. And this is the redevelopment of our website. And then some other website related expenses at $1,018 for a total of $5,665. And that's our year. Very great year financially, ended the year with a surplus, and we are planning towards the future. So was there any questions? No questions? Then I would ask for a motion to, or I guess, Diane, maybe you ask for the motion.
Yes. Do I have a motion to appoint the accountant, Craig and Ross?
Can we approve the financial statements?
Okay, we're going to do that first. Okay. Yeah. A motion to approve the financial statements from 2020, 2021.
I'll move that we do that.
Okay, Ted. Seconded by Andrea. All in favor? Opposed? None. Carried. Okay, and the second motion is the appointment of our accountant, Craig and Ross. Do I have a motion? Dana? Seconder, Susan? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, none. Carried. Thank you. And we are to number 5, our motion to adjourn the meeting. Who would like to move to adjourn our AGM for 2020-2021? Brennan? Thanks so much. Okay, now we're going to take a bit of a break, and at 7 we're going to reconvene. And Janelle, tell us a bit about what's going to happen there.
Yeah, so we are very lucky. We have Mel Monoceros, who is going to be giving a talk with us about accessibility in the arts during the pandemic. And I'm so excited to hear them speak. The first 5 minutes of Mel's talk was not recorded. Mel, they, them introduction. Thank you for joining our artist talk with Mel Monoceros. Thank you to the Assiniboine Credit Union for sponsoring this event. Melanie Monoceros is a poet and interdisciplinary artist exploring polysensory production and somatic grief through text, textile, and film. Their work considers a collective QIP, queer plus crip consciousness by connecting to marvelous bodies living with complexity as sick or disabled. A Black creator of Taino and Arawak heritage, Melanie was awarded the Manitoba Arts Council 2021 Emerging Excellence Prize. In 2020, Melanie's work was hosted by Gallery 1C03, Window Gallery, and C2 Center for Craft, Manitoba Craft Council in Winnipeg, and can be found at the School of Art Gallery at the University of Manitoba and Paved Arts at Treaty 6, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan in 2021. Melanie is based in Treaty 1, Winnipeg, Manitoba, home of the Métis First Nation and the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Dene, Cree, Dakota, and OG Cree nations.
You can go to the next. Oh yeah, you can go to the next slide. Awesome. So this piece and the next, this slide and then the next one are from a piece that I created for the Mawa FMP show in 2019. And it's a hand embroidered, hand quilted sort of, I call it a car blanket because that's what it, no, you can ask questions whenever. That's what it kind of reminds me of, like being in the back seat of a car on a long trip and those kind of woolen blankets with the ribbon on the sides. And I wanted to create something really cozy and really comforting for a topic that was not really those things. And so this piece was about invisibility and the kind of performativeness of inclusivity sometimes. And so it's two-sided. So on the side that you're seeing on this image, it's a very large, probably half of a double bed size, maybe flannel. It's dark green and black plaid. And there are knots of green embroidery thread spaced out all the way through it and dark green ribbon around the edges. You can hang on a wooden dowel from the ceiling of a white gallery. So stitched on this side is the word they in the center. But it's not really stitched in a way that's super legible. It's kind of missing some pieces. It's stitched backwards. And so the right side of the stitching is actually on the inside. It's unfinished. And when you're able to see it kind of close up, you can see that there's lots of knots and kind of disorder in how the stitching is arranged. And very faintly, which is hard to see in the photograph, are words stitched slightly around the edges. So some of the words are Black, chronically ill, and along the bottom it says not a woman. Now if you go to the next picture. So this isn't the best picture of it, but there's kind of a shadow situation or text situation in the center in the same spot as the they on the back. So this is the front piece. Thank you. Perfect, Janelle. Oh, I love it. So this is the word here, H-E-R-E, and it's stitched with full satin stitching. It's very smooth and ordered. The letters are very neat and there's nothing else on the fabric. But it's also an unfinished word. Yes, and that's another picture. That's another view of it. So with this piece, I wanted to kind of explore unfinishedness as a disabled person who creates things and has episodic capacity. I like being able to share, to invite more unfinishedness and more raw edges into textile work and into the gallery, because I think there is such an expectation of perfection and order when we're kind of sharing our work and kind of entering into the sphere of being public. So I'm just getting a note from my phone. Let's see your questions.
Yes, there's one question from Susan Lambert, and she asked, does your polysensory work allow touch?
It does, very much so. So all of my textile pieces, for the most part, when they're available when they're exhibited, are touchable. And that practice began with my work in Tangled, the Point of Origin show. And that was in 2016. Because my first entry into creating visual work was within a disabled gallery. And so everything that we were thinking about in terms of how we were going to be able to offer it had a lot of questions around how to make it most accessible. And so as someone who is creating the pieces, I was really thinking about and just experiencing the wide ranges of touch that can happen in the work. And so I don't know if I have a photo of it, but a few of the pieces are woven, and I have many, many, many different colors, many different kinds of knots, many different kinds of stitches, lots of different textures. Sorry, it's a wheelchair. Lots of different textures. And I do that so that it's delicious also to be viewed by eyes. It's also delicious to be touched and kind of moved around. And so as much as possible, I try to make my work available for being touched, which is really difficult during COVID. And so haven't landed on a solution, but I've spent the last while of the COVID trying to think of ways that the touch aspect of my work can be translated in ways that make it COVID safe. And so if you go to the next photo, and the next one. Yeah, so this is from Point of Origin. So when we get to a couple more pictures, I'm going to return to that question. So this piece is called Pain Map, and it was on exhibit at Gallery 1C03 last January and was one of the pieces I made with Point of Origin. And again, all of this was, I believe this one might have been the only one that wasn't tactile because it's white, but I think it might have been. I can't remember right now. And this piece is mixed machine quilting and embroidery. And the upper kind of trachea, shoulder, collarbone area is a copy of my own x-ray of my throat. So it's not too big, maybe 35 by 35 inches, and it's that cream colored white muslin. And then there is stitching all in red, different shades of red embroidery floss. And from top to bottom, there's an anatomical brain, and then the trachea x-ray. And then below that is the lower part of the spine and into the pelvis. And then to the right of the spine is an anatomical heart with lots of stitched rays kind of radiating out from it. And it has some embroidered questions. Where did it start? When does it hurt? Where does it hurt? Where did it start? How? Now. And for folks that live with disability, live with chronic illness, that have to intersect with doctors doubting themselves, this is a really common experience, especially for chronic pain folks. And this piece kind of gets to the whole name of the show. So with Point of Origin, the name is, there's this medical assumption that there's a specific injury or a specific physical trauma or a specific event that causes symptoms, that causes pain, that causes the body to function differently. And as a multiply marginalized person who has, legacies of inherited complications and brilliance as well, but there's a lot of pain that I'm born with via my identities. And because of the world that we're in, because of the world that we, obviously have to navigate, which is very built on white supremacy, very much built around ableism and cis heterosexism. And so as a gender Black disabled creature, there's not a lot of safety, there's not a lot of ease or comfort for me in the world. And so another one of the reasons I like making quilts is because they're very cozy, and they can create safety. But with all of those experiences, with different experiences of microaggressions, with elements of childhood trauma or adult trauma, there are different points that are going to be points of origin of an experience of pain or of an experience of mental illness. And and so I wanted to kind of deconstruct the idea of having one single point that is the beginning of something. So that's this piece, and then you go to the next one. So this piece is about the same size, like 30 to 35 square, and has a background of dark green with kind of a gold, almost like pollen polka dots over it. So it has a gold green background. Along the bottom is a dark brown ribbon with silver spoons sewn up and down, and just one bar of ribbon along the bottom. And then kind of sporadically around the quilt are little bits of kente cloth and some clocks constructed out of wooden spoons, gold wooden spoons. There's one full clock that reads 9 o'clock, and there's a bunch of different ones that are missing hands and missing pieces. And this piece is called Running Late, and it is about spoons and the spoon theory, which I will get to in the next couple slides, and the idea that it's really hard to be on time, it's hard to catch up, it's hard to feel like you're catching up with society when you're navigating a lot of different intersections and a lot of different limitations because of the ableist world and because of just having a body with limitations. So I want to share a poem, which is the next slide. And then, so I'll just read this part and then you can go to the next one. I just put it up there in case you wanted to be able to see it easier. So Running Late. Can you go to the first one? Thank you. How will I ever catch up if I'm always starting late? Math is not my thing, yet I find myself devising formulas and working out calculations constantly throughout the day. 1, waking up equals -3 spoons because I couldn't sleep. 2, get out of bed equals -5 spoons because everything hurts as I move. 3, feed the cats equals -5 spoons, bending and standing, ouch. 4, have a shower equals +4 spoons, yay, clean body, -2 spoons, standing, exhausted. The next one. Now for breakfast. I don't have enough spoons to figure out if I have enough spoons to get through the day, to get through this day. Why is self-care and taking it easy only okay for some, but deeply shameful for others? Do we only get to care for our needs after we have adequately contributed to society? Do we only get to ask for help once we've earned it and promise to return the favor? What if I can't give back in the ways that I need? The more in tune I've grown to the movements and rhythm and pace of this chronically ill body, the more out of sync I find myself everywhere else. I dream of existing in a universe where all of the complexities of how I be me when I am my most self are held or able to be held up without complex and infuriating negotiations about accommodations, because that place wasn't built while pretending that bodies and minds like mine do not exist. I dream of an understanding that my relationship to time is not the same as yours or theirs or theirs. I dream. Next one. And this is just a little infographic I wanted to share about the spoon theory and kind of where that poem and where the quilts are born from. And so I want to say it was in mid-2000s that Christine Miserando, who's the creator of the spoon theory, came up with this. I think it was 2004, but maybe a bit later. And so Christine lives with chronic illness. I believe she has lupus. And the story that you can look up her name and look for the proper story. But so I like the story that goes into the illustration. So she was out with a friend of hers who wasn't disabled, and they were at a diner. So they had, you know, cutlery and stuff on the table, and she was trying to explain what it was like living with a chronic illness, what it was like kind of navigating her days. And she grabbed 12 spoons. She said, okay, and she gave the spoons to her friend, and said, for every activity, for every movement, for every task, we're going to take away a certain amount of spoons. You don't get to refill your spoons. You only get a certain amount of spoons at the beginning of the day, and everything is going to cost something. And so you have to kind of negotiate what you're going to spend your spoons on throughout the day. And so that's kind of what this infographic that reads. The spoon theory is a creative way to explain to healthy friends, which I complicated, and family, what it's like living with a chronic illness. Dysautonomia patients often have limited energy represented by spoons. Doing too much in one day can leave you short on spoons the next day. For example, if you only had 12 spoons per day, how would you use them? Take away 1 spoon if you didn't sleep well last night, forgot to take your meds, or skipped a meal. Take away 4 spoons if you have a cold. And then the illustrations are, there's a column of 1 spoon, 2 spoons, 3 spoons, and 4 spoons, with the 1 spoon activities being like getting out of bed, taking your meds, 2 spoons, bathing, surfing the internet, styling your hair. 3 spoons is to make and eat a meal, socializing, housework, or if you have to drive somewhere. And 4 spoons as going out to work, going shopping, going to the doctor, exercise. So for folks that don't live in proximity to or in relationship to folks that live with chronic illness and have to navigate this kind of algebra, it can be really difficult to make accommodations and to make space in your understanding for the kind of waves that chronic illness exists as. So yeah, next slide. Okay. So this is a weaving that is a commission that I made for someone a couple years ago, and it's a woven tapestry. It's different kinds of wool, and mostly wool and cotton, and then there are strands of pearl and some bits of metal and lace woven into it, and it has kind of dark blue and dark black tassels at the bottom. The wool is mostly dark purple, dark gray, a couple of light blues, and some warmer colors. This piece is called the Opalis Gate, and it's named after a book series that I love. And I wanted to offer it just as sort of a transition through kind of dream space, because that's kind of how I envisioned this piece, working for the person that it went to. So the next slide. So the next couple of pictures are just me in different studio setups. This is me weaving at my old house, or setting up the loom rather, not weaving. Yeah, so I'm just sitting at a table facing a wooden loom with metal harnesses in the center and some white and blue thread coming towards me. And then the next one. So this one and the next one, actually. So yeah, this is me. I'm kneeling on the floor with a glue gun. I'm wearing black, and I'm working on the backing of a blue rug. And yeah, that's kind of what's visible. Then the next one. And then this is a scene of my sewing room, which doesn't look like this anymore. And so there's a very large, puffy, pastel colored quilt in greens and peaches and blues, spread under a quilting machine that says HQ Suite 16. There's a wall of books and photographs at the back behind it, and pink quilt in the upper right next to a window. This is just some of the chaos that exists when you're working on a really big quilt. I feel very grateful to have the space that I have to work with this size of things, to experiment with the size of things, being able to make up a space that fits what I need and change it around is a huge asset as a disabled artist. And something like this, so this is a quilting machine, a free motion quilting machine, and something like this, which holds a lot more and can do a lot more because it's, you know, mechanical and smart and from the future, makes quilting easier and makes accessing that craft and accessing that part of my practice easier. So that's that photo. Next one. So this and the next one or two are, oh, sorry, just go back. This one then, they didn't go through. So this is a photo of my work up at Paved in Saskatoon right now. It's a still of 2 screens. On the left is the black and white of my film, Inviting the Entanglement, part 3 of Ancestor Radio. And on the right is the kind of green teal of Tuning the Ocean, which is part 1. And then at the bottom of the green screen, it says in brackets, static, loud, rainfall, heavy, and faint. So the film on the left has no sound, and the film on the right has a lot of sound, a lot of different kinds of textures of sound. And I wanted to, with that film, I used captioning and different ways of describing the sound to kind of bring viewers and listeners and non-listeners into the work and into the kind of encompassing feeling that can happen when you're working with grief, which is what that film is about. And then the last slide. So this is my piece down the house. It's a rug at the front of the frame, and then there's a framed quilt on the wall behind it. The rug is dark blue with 2 white L shapes on the upper left and bottom right corner. And there's some blue squiggles and green and brown spots all through it. And so that's what I was working on in the earlier photo. And with this piece, this was up this year. I can't remember what month it is right now. So it was up in the spring and during COVID times. And so one of the ways that this was able to be accessible was that there was very limited, you had to make an appointment to go see it. Unfortunately, folks weren't able to touch it. But I tried to do in the description, I recorded audio descriptions and wrote audio descriptions for each piece, trying to describe some of the tactility and what it would feel like if you're running your hands over it, because that experience wasn't available this year. So yeah, that's just the slideshow and some of my work. Thank you so much for doing that amazing tech support, Janelle. Yeah, and so with being the body that I am, with being the creator that I am, I can't always rely on outside forces or outside support for how my practice exists. And so there aren't really, a lot of really accessible studio spaces. There aren't, a ton of even, gallery spaces that might be barrier free, but there's so many other ways of thinking about access, which I'll get into, that still might be there might not be physical barriers, but there still might be barriers to being comfortable, to being feeling safe. And so thinking of ways of being kind of hybrid offerings and events over the next however long we're in COVID, which I think is the beginning of a season. Yeah, I think that there are ways that we can think about access in a really broad way, and ways that we can do, so we can create support, create networks of interdependence within disabled communities, within chronically ill and neurodivergent and MAD communities. There are so many ways that our intersections support our survival, but because the world isn't necessarily supporting us, it can be hard for us to support each other. And so often, I encourage folks that don't live with disability or don't live with chronic illness or have access to some sorts of able-bodied privilege to leverage that and to think about what they have capacity for, and to be very mindful of and intentional of the kinds of help that they offer, because folks often really want to sometimes show up a lot. They want to, they can do all these things and they're really excited because they want to help and because they care about you. But we live in a complex world, and we live in a world that has lots of different interruptions. And, a friend promising to take you to the grocery store on Thursday or on Friday or the weekend could be like, for a disabled person, okay, that's the goal this week. We're going to go out. I'm going to go out of the house. I'm going to prepare my energy. I'm going to prepare the animals if I have to bring a service animal. I'm going to make sure I have like stuff for when I get home. Got to like do the whole thing. And something comes up for the able-bodied person and they have to change. And that might not be like, they might not think about it too much. They might think, oh, we can do it another day. But being more in relationship to how our disabled can really exist and how our needs really are very faceted and very can be very fractal, can create more meaningful access, and also invites able-bodied folks to be in more relationship to their own capacities, because society is going to be telling you that because you're able-bodied, you should do all the things and you shouldn't feel any way about them. But grief can still affect you, and trauma can still affect you, and exhaustion can still affect you, and time can still affect you. And when I kind of facilitate around access and accessibility, I kind of use the anecdote that in my facilitation life, often when I ask about access needs in the room, able-bodied folks will almost, at least one able-bodied person will be like, oh, I don't have anything. I have no needs. I have no access needs. So like, pass, next person, which like some people like don't want to share. But some people think that there are only certain kinds of people that have needs to be in the world. We all have different needs to be in the world. Sometimes we need glasses. Sometimes we need orthotic shoes. Sometimes we need like those like pressure gloves for your hands. That you might not consider yourself chronically ill or disabled, or all the different ways that we can be complex, but there are still ways that as a person in this world, there are ways that you find a way to like make the world more comfortable for you, to make the world more comfortable for the people that you care about. If that's cutting the tags out of, the shirts or your underwear or something like that, or if that's always picking up, a food that your partner likes because they're having a hard time. There's care and there's relationship in so many of the ways that we exist that we might not think about them as access. But I invite folks that don't think that they have access needs and think that only certain kinds of people have access needs, kind of dissolve that boundary around how they think about it, because it allows you to be in much broader care relationships. And it's a really beautiful thing to be in relationship to other people's need, even if you can't support it. Like if there's ways that you can offer to help someone find a ride if you can't give them a ride. There's just lots of different ways that I think we have ways of supporting. And as disabled and chronically ill folks, we have so much genius about how to figure out how to support each other. And able-bodied folks should listen. Which leads me to my my kind of article that I wanted to share. So and so this is art and accessibility amidst a pandemic. Let me just get the thumbs up from interpreters. They're okay to go with this. Okay, thank you. Amongst the art worlds across Turtle Island, much of 2020 found artists and organizers experimenting, fumbling, trying new things, and offering alternative invitations and exhibitions. While I am, as a Black disabled artist, used to surviving and creating within, alongside, and underneath capitalism, oppression, racism, and ableism, the pandemic revealed a new level of perceived disposability. Something became unearthed in a more aggressive way as the pandemic spread and regulations intensified. Much of the messaging in the early weeks discussed how the only people really affected would be elders and the immunocompromised. Everyone else might get it, but be okay. We essentially had government heads telling the public that the risk wasn't so high because the only people that we'd be risk losing were sick or old. We witnessed crowds march against public health regulations. We witnessed governments promote inter-country or inter-provincial travel over preventative healthcare. We witnessed numerous instances of our friends, coworkers, exes, teachers, neighbors choose versions of self-care that put themselves and others at risk. It was painful watching friends and family members, community and kin become ill or pass away without the deserved care and comfort surrounding them because of the restrictions, while other groups of friends went to the cottage or had small, semi-masked, sort of distanced gatherings. It was this interesting paradox of observation. My life, for example, is made up of a lot of staying home alone, conducting my work virtually, building long-distance kinships, ordering essential items, pre, during, post-pandemic, ordering things to my house. This is some of my truth. The prospect of a similarly shaped daily life for most normals and able-bodieds anyway was so abhorrent that we couldn't even keep our initial lockdown measures for the 3 months it takes to build a new habit. I should be understood, I am not talking about essential workers like healthcare workers, cab and transit drivers, postal workers, grocery store clerks, pharmacists, etc. But one of the most challenging things to arise was witnessing the world double down on its disregard for disabled, chronically ill, neurodivergent, and deaf people. The level of gaslighting of disabled people's voices and stories that occurred early on in the pandemic and subsequent quarantines, while not surprising, was quite emphatically heartbreaking. On one end, the rhetoric was very much centered around our lives being disposable if that meant that more ease, comfort, less social disruption to the rest of society. On the other end, poof, internet connection. Everything was magically available digitally and remotely. As long as you had a computer, a fast internet connection, a camera, and could hear or read lips, because the majority of events shifted online, did so without basic accessibility measures like captions or ASL. By April 2020, the majority of those who could work from home were opting or mandated to do so. Internet companies extended usage overages. Clothing companies began marketing professional loungewear. 3 times as many people were using grocery or other delivery services to get their needs met without shame. If over the first year of our pandemic, you came across the terms mutual aid, community fridge, care collective, and others, you have sick, disabled, LGBTQIA and 2S people and BIPOC folk to thank, along with the wisdom and widespread support of those most engendered. Suddenly, after years of going through a myriad of gatekeeping hoops in order to engage with the world more accessibly, only to be told, no, it's not possible. You're not right for the position. It would wreck the vibe of the event. It's really just important that everyone's there in the same room. You understand. After losing opportunities, income, professional, social, spiritual, and cultural connections, after being told that we were not replaceable because we cannot participate in person. Turns out it's actually super possible, even easy for some. The request just has to come from the neurotypical, or the able-bodied, the economic producers of society. We, disabled, chronically ill, deaf, mad people, felt it coming. We knew what this would mean for us and our kin. We showed up for each other. We showed up for ourselves when that was the only option. We practiced radical vulnerability in order to build intimacies across distance and to cushion ourselves with what care we could. We, metaphorically, looked at each other with narrowed gazes when scores of able-bodied folk took to Both took our viral vulnerability for granted by continuing to go out, host gatherings, travel unnecessarily, etc., and wailed about how lifestyles like ours at home, unable to see who we want or go where we want, shaping the majority of your decisions around the potential risk to your immune system, that was completely unacceptable and unsurvivable. Living every day with the above considerations is not unfamiliar to many disabled people. I know it is very familiar to me. As we collectively breathe out the dust of 2020 and now in 2021, which we will be doing, I think, for seasons to come, I'm left with a vibrating inquiry. In the coming years, as the first cohorts of COVID long haulers, those with lingering or lifelong symptoms, begin becoming more normalized enrichments of our communities and societies, the percentage of people living with disability, chronic illness, neurodivergence, and struggling with their mental health will increase greatly. How are you going to show care and welcoming to all the non-normative ways of being a body in our increasingly distanced and virtual world? No, I'm really asking. So for me, the purpose of accessibility is to invite and allow all present to be in the space, virtually or otherwise, as their whole and fullest selves. To be able to experience the event or meeting, gathering with as few barriers as possible. Removing barriers to participation also gives agency to our participants to gauge their capacity and level of engagement. Reminder, this continues to be an impossible time for our collective mental health and our abilities to rest and grieve, able-bodied, disabled, chronically ill, or otherwise. I offer here a list of possible options. The below applies to your future calls for submissions, your exhibitions and panel discussions, your theater performances, your film festivals, screenings, poetry readings, book launches, Zoom meetings, and other online gatherings. 1, 12 accessible things to consider when art sharing or hosting. 1, consider access first, not as an afterthought. This includes in your yearly budgets, in your grant proposals. We are tired of being told that you don't have the money. We're tired of being told that the presence and comfort of able-bodied people is more important than ours, which is the message conveyed when accessibility and accommodations are ignored. 2, include an agenda. There is enough uncertainty in the world. There is enough uncertainty in the world right now. Tell your guests what they can expect and always give them an out if it doesn't work for them. It can be brief and it can have items still to be determined. 3, caption all films, video, and live performances. Filmmakers, I promise you, it will not degrade the integrity of your work. Practice composing your scenes or frames with captions and subtitles in mind. If you're filming in a language paired with subtitles, keep in mind the placement of them and if they'll be obscured by the captions or vice versa. 4, image and material descriptions, especially on social media, include a description in the captions, because not everyone's device works with the alt text feature on some social media platforms. Descriptions are necessary for blind and low vision folks using screen readers online to have images relayed to them, as screen readers cannot pick up images. Descriptions are also useful for neurodivergent people and others who are cognitively diverse to help understand the image and its context. They can additionally provide the describer, the artist, the filmmaker, an opportunity to highlight the elements that they might want to draw attention to, such as lighting or composition. 5, ASL interpretation. If there will be speaking or singing, there should be interpretation and or captioning. 6, audio describe. Live events and films when possible. This is to describe any actions, settings, special effects, or other visual business that takes up the scene. 7, request that everyone put their pronouns beside their name in the meeting. Not all women are she's and hers. Not all men are he's and hims. Not all gender conforming people are non-binary or use they and them. If your event is specifically for women or femmes or non-binary people, Recognize that those labels are not interchangeable. 8, make everything that can be recorded and archived available afterwards with transcriptions. Even if it's just for limited time, the option to attend something at our own pace is crucial. Just because it's online doesn't make it automatically easier for someone to attend, remember. 9, content warnings, including flashing lights, loud or disruptive audio, as well as the more familiar warnings for violence and nudity, harsh and problematic language, etc. 10, offer touch tours when possible, an invitation for blind and low vision visitors to get a tactile sense of what it is presented on stage or in a gallery. Offer video tours for in-person work living behind COVID closed doors. 11, display accessibility information for the event, venue, virtual and in person, login and tech requirements, transit and parking, scent restrictions, washrooms, etc. very clearly on your website. This includes any measures taken to align with COVID-19 precautions and protocols. I'll add, as chronically ill folks who have to be especially more mindful of going out during COVID times, it's a sign that you care for us if you tell us what you're doing to care for COVID in this space. 12, never assume a solely able-bodied audience. We never know what people are living with. We're so intersectional, we're so complicated, and we're changing constantly. My access needs yesterday are going to be different tomorrow. Yours might be the same. The more flexibility and gentleness we have with how each of us has the possibility to exist, the more access just becomes part of how we make art, how we organize, how we are activists in our community, how we work as interpreters, how we work as healthcare professionals. There are so many ways that society tells us not to think about access because disabled people aren't supposed to be around and visible and taking up space, but we are because we're awesome. So make access just part of the DNA of whatever is being presented and offered. And again, reminders that unprecedented moments in how we're experiencing making art, sharing it, media, being in relationship with each other, building collaborations, everything is different. And it's really okay to not know how that feels, how that settles, to not know what your answers are for a year from now, because we're in a very big orbital shift in this moment. Yeah, I just want to offer that to always just be gentle and care for yourselves when you can, and drink water. And that's me. Thank you so much. And I'm open for questions if you have them.
Thank you so much, Mel. That was wonderful. So great to hear all those 12 suggestions, just really great accessibility tips. If anybody would like to ask a question or make a comment, feel free to turn on your video, unmute yourself, or throw it in the chat. I see Marina M says, thanks, Mel.
Thanks,
in the chat there. Oh. And Michelle Pichette said, really wonderful, Mel. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Oh, looks like Ted has a question. And then I'll read Susan's after.
Well, a couple things, a question and a comment as well. One thing is that often I've read about people being referred to as tabs, which means temporary able-bodied. And I think it brings to light something that you've talked about as to not knowing the complexity of the world around us in terms of how it changes and how people perhaps have an able body at one point, but they never know what the future is going to hold. And so bringing to light the kind of understanding of others that you know that we all have the potential for any kind of physical or mental disability to happen, whatever, at any time. And so I thought it just, because of what you've been saying, it just brings to mind the idea of tabs anyway. And so I just wanted to bring out that one thing. But I also wanted to know about when I was looking at your slides and hearing you talk about the specifics. I don't know that I caught anything that you said about smell. And I wondered if, is that one of the things that you also are considering, things like, as you said, the quilt in the back seat of a car and all that kind of stuff. And I just wondered whether smell was something that you find that you've brought into your work.
Thank you for asking that and for your comments, Ted. Smell is something I think about so much, but I haven't found a way to bring it into my work yet. I have some jars on the go that I like to play with and see how much smell I can trap and what can be offered. I also do encourage folks to smell the textiles because wool smells different than cotton, smells different than silk, smells different than all these things, and they absorb my hands and they absorb the air. So yeah, I haven't really found a way to bring it in a shareable way, but it's definitely something I work with and think about.
It's such a strong sense, isn't it? It's it's one of the really strong senses that take us, transport us into whatever we're feeling, Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
Thanks, Ted.
So Susan, I'll let you ask your question yourself instead of, unless you want me to read it. You're muted.
Oh.
No,
He
you want me to,
doesn't wanna
do
read
you want me to read it? Because you're muted.
You're muted. Oh, there we go.
Oh,
Oh, Gary, hey.
still muted.
Still muted.
Okay, sorry.
There you go. Go for it.
Okay. I'm sorry if I interrupted Ted. Sorry.
Oh,
Ted.
no. I'm done.
Oh, okay. My question was that if you had learning disabilities and I found that my learning disabilities, because I can't learn by hearing, I can only learn by reading. And so, and just the way that you were talking, I just kind of got that impression that you kind of had the same kind of, that was kind of part of your neurodivergence chronic illness. Anyway, that's part of my neurodivergence chronic illness. And I also have this thing about smell. I had that in my message. And then Ted
I beat you to the punch.
mentioned something about smell too. But Ted and I have this connection too. We've known each other for quite a while, and we kind of end up ending each other's sentences sometimes. Yeah.
Thanks, Susan. Yeah, I definitely feel that my neurodivergence is part of my artistry. It's part of how I relate to different. It's how I think the ways that my brain exists is why I like the things that I do. That obviously, but yeah, it's I like making things that really engage a lot of different sensual elements as I'm working with them. And I am also very sensitive to smells and can get kind of grumpy about bad smells that I don't like. And so yeah, just that definitely affects my process. But yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah.
So we just, oh, go ahead, Susan.
Another question. I think there's another question here.
Yes, from Brennan.
Oh yeah. Brennan asked if I would mind speaking a bit more about film, which I can do. It's also 7:08, and I'm okay to stay for a few more minutes if other folks, if that's okay to know. Okay. Hi, Brennan. So yeah, so I started doing film. I started working with doing digital stories, and so using photographs to kind of animate and visualize my poetry. And so I made a few films like that, kind of exploring my interests in what I wanted to see and what my interest in editing was and like capacity for editing was, because it's not for everybody. Turns out I love it. So I really like film editing. So I kind of worked with digital for a little bit. And I used to live in Toronto, and so there was a film group that I was connected with there. And through that group, I worked with a mentorship, worked in a mentorship with Francie Duran, who's actually had some work here just the other day, and Leslie Sudnett, who's from here. And I worked on the 16 mil the first time because I was really new to 16 millimeter, and I didn't really know if filming was what I was excited about as much as the actual 16 millimeter of it. And so I got into it by quite literally like getting, like just gathering a bunch of 16 mil and like just like messing it with my hands and like looking at it and then cutting it up and like poking holes in it and drawing all over it and bleaching it and painting it and stuff. And then did that for a while. And it's just very much my, like how my brain was just so into the touching and into the mess of it all. And then in the processing of that, I kind of learned more about 16 mil and kind of wanted to make more of it. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking.
Great. Well, I guess we've come to the end. I would like to
Yeah.
encourage everyone to turn on your videos, unmute yourself, so we can all give Mel a round of applause. Give everyone a second there. Thank you
Right.
so much for sharing with us. It was a wonderful
Thank
talk.
you. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Right. So everyone have a
Yeah,
wonderful
thank you. And thanks for your
evening.
support.
No, you go, Mel.
Oh, I was
Sorry.
gonna say thank you for your support, Janelle and the A&M, and just like generally anyone who's ever come to a show or
Really good.
watched the thing.
Thank you so
I've only been here for like 3.5 years, and I feel like I'm gonna be here forever, and I want to be making my art here forever. And it just thank you for welcoming me into this community. And yeah,
So wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Everyone
you,
have a
thank you.
wonderful evening. And thanks
Thank
again,
you.
Mel.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much. Hi, Dana. Thank you. Okay, bye.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.